You make up for it by telling her she can go see the Barbie movie with you.
So
How are you?
what do you think of it? Good morning.
I see.
Good morning.
I like that.
I never watched that.
Yeah, I like. Now this one is really young.
Yeah, it's more of a bio.
Yeah.
We're over just.
Or so we don't get formal people showing up in 10 minutes. We don't have to do all the work.
This kind of furious.
It is. And usually I've got more people. I will walk in the day
Donna has all the copies.
Okay. I got the right Wednesday. My whole month revolves around board meeting day, but once I get the right day.
Yes, they're both gonna be under.
Don't oversleep.
Thank you.
We got it all.
Is anyone speaking or just?
No. We're there.
Yesterday. You just like give us a pitch on Cheryl's. Easier. I think my office, I live in, people try to use SharePoint, I'm also living in. It's real, so it's like having a transition. Yeah.
Hey, did y'all miss me today? You just hang out.
Yeah, but for a lot of other things.
I mean, I just think
All right, we'll call the September 13th, regular board meeting of Cape Cod Utility order. First is we need to excuse Mr. Norris, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Adams, and Mr. Riley. All in favor? All right, the adoption of the agenda. We have three amendments to the full board agenda that need to be adopted during the motion.
Yes, sir. We have a walk-in item that was authorized as a walk-in by the executive committee. We want to add to the executive committee report item B1, little 3, which is the water station interlocal agreement with New Hanover County. The second modification we'd like to make is to move item 2 from new business committee report, long-range planning, from long-range planning onto consent. The original intent from the long-range planning committee was for it to be on consent. And then the final thing that we'd like to clarify is in committee reports, Human Resources Committee, item 2 was intended to be informational. It's incorrectly listed as action. So we seek a motion to make those modifications to the agenda before you.
I'll move that.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, now we need a motion to adopt the agenda. Second. All in favor? Approve the minutes. Kim?
The minutes from our previous meeting in August are going to be in your package. There's no comment.
Second. All in favor? And now the consent agenda.
Public comments.
Oh, I'm sorry, public comment.
We have none.
Keep on down, consent agenda.
We've already had that vote, so we just, all we need is a vote to approve.
Okay, can you vote to approve the consent agenda?
As amended.
As amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, move to the next report.
I do not have anything today, nor do I have a second.
Executive Director report.
Yes, we have before you the key indicators report, the safety report, the environmental report, the strategic plan update as informational items. I'd like to put those four on the table and ask if there are questions. Then I would also like to note that we have been looking very closely at your key indicators report and your environmental report in particular. And over the next several months, what we'd like to do is we'd like to bring you a proposed revision to the key indicators report. This is really the indicators that are driven and tied to your strategic plan. Now that we have our strategic plan and we've had it for a year, we'd like to realign the key indicators to the strategic plan. Any indicator that would fall off of the key indicators report, we would put in the environmental section. We'd like to rename that environmental section to operational metrics. So you won't lose any data. We're simply going to reorder it. We're going to work as staff to bring forward a draft for you to review and see what you're comfortable with, and the final version will come forward in our perfect world in January with the workload it may be. What are you going to move? We've had conversations about that, and we'll bring you a draft that shows you the before and after. Our intent is not to leave anything off, but maybe some of these things, I'll give you examples. We have a key indicator that talks about how many fats, oils, and grease facilities that we're inspecting. That's probably an operational metric. So we would drop that to an operational metric report. And there may be things that are on the environmental report now or the safety report that really should be key indicators. So we're looking to reorder it. We'll bring it forward as a draft, see if you agree, make any modifications that you think are necessary, and then that will be the reporting going out for the strategic plan. The next and last item on the executive director's report is a report out of your 2023 customer satisfaction survey results. That's for our communications director. Come forward.
Morning.
All right, so in May, this board approved the questions for what is our first independently conducted customer satisfaction survey. And as you know, this is a key part of our strategic plan initiative to positively transform brand perception. And so today, we're here to present the results of that survey. I have Ryan Murray, who is from ETC, who's joining us remotely. And so, Ryan, can you hear us? Okay. Ryan is actually, he's presenting from a hotel room which doesn't have great wireless. So we're actually going to leave him off video in the hopes that we won't have too many technical glitches, but he's going to go ahead and present. So I'll turn it over to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Vaughn. Everybody can see the presentation, I'm assuming?
Yes.
All right, great. And I'm just going to forward one slide. Does that work?
Yep.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks for confirming. So it's a pleasure to be here today. As Vaughn mentioned, I'm actually coming to you all from Durham, North Carolina. I thought about making the drive last night, but just wasn't up to it after I got done with Orange County here. So my name's Ryan Murray. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Research for ETC Institute here, and we're really the nation's leader in market research for local government organizations. And as you can see on the screen there, we've done a lot of work across the country with a high concentration of work on on the East Coast, specifically North Carolina, and all the way down to South Florida there. We're based in Kansas City, in the metropolitan area there, just on the Kansas side of the state line between Kansas and Missouri. So you can see we do a lot of work in that area in Chicagoland, but we've got clients from throughout the area. And for about the last 40 years or so, our mission has really been to help municipal and governments and just governmental organizations gather data to enhance organizational performance. And so the purpose of this survey is really an objective customer assessment with the delivery of your services. There were some perception related questions as well. But really what we wanted to do was get just basic feedback from residents in the area who have CFPUA services to help identify priorities based on the survey results and help to provide customers an opportunity to provide feedback on your services. A little bit about the survey methodology. It was a 6-page survey, which is a good-sized survey for this particular subject, and we mailed that to a random sample of residential households within your service area, and we'll see that on the next slide. Each survey took about 10 or 15 minutes for residential customers to complete, and you may think, hey, a 6-page survey maybe is taking longer than that, and it typically does, but there were a lot of skip patterns in the survey. So if you didn't have any field interactions with staff, or you didn't say yes to a particular set of questions, you were kind of skipping through some bulky parts of the survey there, and we'll see some of those skip patterns as well once we get into the results. Our goal was 1,000 completed surveys. At the end, when we finalized collection, we had 1,073 completed surveys from randomly selected residents, which gives us a margin of error of about plus or minus 3.0% at the 95% level of confidence. And what that means is if we were to go out and complete 1,073 surveys 100 times, 95 out of 100 times, we're going to get these same results plus or minus our margin of error of about 3%. When we talk about location of survey respondents and your GIS shapefiles in your service area, what we want to make sure that we're doing is getting a good geographic distribution of responses from throughout the service area. And as you can see on this map, we have responses from the very far northern areas of your service area all the way to the southern areas. And so we did a really good job making sure that that representation is there geographically. And what basically happens is on the online survey, respondents are required to complete or input their home address at the end, and then ETC Institute verifies the home address to make sure that it's part of the random sample. And then we do one added layer for the anonymity of the respondent. We geocode the home address to the nearest or approximate block location to develop the map that you see over there to the left. When we talk about the actual survey respondent demographics, so we know geographically we have good distribution from throughout the community. When we talk about the actual demographics of the respondents, we're trying to make sure that we're matching those closely to some of the service area boundaries, which is primarily that New Hanover County. And so depending on if you're looking at Wilmington alone or New Hanover County or doing some Esri research just based on your service areas, we feel like the results are really representative when it comes to some of those key demographic features such as gender, household income. We're looking for our bracketed responses to be close to or bell curve heightening at the mean, which we see there. Race ethnicity factors are well within our margin of error, and that's what we're really trying to get to, is making sure that the results that we collected are basically within our margins of error for the demographics of the actual community. And so you can see here, no major differences between what the census says for New Hanover County compared to the CFPUA survey that we collected. When we talk about the bottom line up front, overall satisfaction with reliability of services is extremely high. You rate significantly above national regional performance range values for the reliability of water and sewer services. And although ratings of the taste and smell of water are below those regional national performance range averages, you remain competitive in terms of water and sewer charges, which is one of our top priorities for improvement, but we'll help contextualize that with some of our comparisons. When we talk about top priorities for improvement, we're talking about our important satisfaction analysis that I'll introduce again later down the line here, but it's really about safety of drinking water, water service charges, how well you're planning for the future water and sewer needs, which is kind of a reliability measure, and the taste of your drinking water. And all those safety is really the top priority. Respondents are mostly telling us with this survey that they believe this is an extremely important item. So it's not necessarily that they're concerned about the safety of the water, but that it's continually being important to them. And it may be one of those trust issues where we've, maybe lost some consumer trust, and we're working to build that back. But folks are generally telling us they feel good about the safety of the water. It's just really important to them. Water service charges are continually a top priority for improvement in our highest performing organizations. When we look at the benchmarking, you'll see kind of why that might be, or how those ratings are kind of always stuck down below that 40% satisfaction area. And planning for future water and sewer needs is really a common priority that's especially important in coastal and arid communities. And the taste of drinking water, while something that I know that somebody in the room is probably looking at each other and saying, hey, there's not much we can do about the taste. Overall satisfaction was really mixed with that one, but 25% of respondents indicated it was important, and that's why it kind of topped out at one of those high priorities for improvement. And at first, I want to kind of go through, when we get into the actual results here, I want to talk about interactions with your staff. Your staff do an excellent job, it seems, based on the responses that were provided to us. When we asked respondents just simply yes, no, if you'd had any interactions with CFPUA staff within the last 2 years, we had about 40% of respondents indicate yes, I'd seen or had some kind of interaction, but most of that contact was by phone. About 1 in 3 respondents said in person, 1 in 5 in person for field staff, and then fewer and fewer email, mail, or social media. The primary reason that customers are likely to contact you is either to make a payment or set up or transfer a close account, or a meter reading or billing concern. Very less frequently, we're seeing non-billing trash recycling service contacts, questions about fees or drinking water systems. And really it's, hey, we're going to call you and we're going to make a payment, or we're going to close our account or set up a new one, or I've got a billing concern. And that's really what those 40% of respondents are primarily telling us, that, hey, I'm calling you about my bill. When we talk about the satisfaction with CFPUA staff regarding each of the following items: politeness, technical skills, overall responsiveness, how easy they were to contact, and overall resolution to the request, received extremely high levels of very satisfied and satisfied responses. I mean, the folks that are tasked with taking these phone calls, which is the primary mode of contact, are really doing an excellent job making sure that respondents, even if they're calling about an issue that might not be CFPUA's, or it might not be a billing issue on behalf of CFPUA, they're still leaving with a majority of satisfied respondents. And so I think the one to take note of is that we've got 13% of respondents who gave some kind of a combined very dissatisfied or dissatisfied response to the overall resolution to your issue or request. But if you're calling CFPUA about a trash service for which, CFPUA may only be billing you for, that person is most likely to leave with a dissatisfied remark on that particular contact. So I think that these ratings, while you see 13% there and 10% in the overall responsiveness and negative ratings, these ratings are extremely positive overall, and everybody should be very proud of the customer service staff that you've got. When we talk about staff in the field, work sites, and things like that over the last 2 years, approximately the same number of respondents indicated they'd seen somebody in the field, about 38% compared to our 41% in the previous slide. When we talk about satisfaction with those folks, they're also doing extremely well. Now, when we come to field staff repair to lawn or landscaping, I like to put on, I'm an elected official in my own community. One of the things that I noticed is when we had easement utilities, everybody was complaining that there wasn't sod put down. Well, the law isn't to have the company put sod down. It's really about seed, and that's pretty much it. So some of that is probably, that 15% of dissatisfaction is likely somewhat of a homeowner doesn't understand or didn't like it, or maybe they got really close to landscaping or whatever that might be. But for the vast majority of these, over 68%, or almost 7 out of 10 respondents who indicated they'd seen your field staff, were left with a positive reaction. So that's a really good sign. Again, all of your field staff, customer service staff over the phone, performing exceptionally well. I want to next get into perceptions. This is a little bit longer of a section. A lot of the questions here are kind of pie charts or ratings of your overall services, and this is where we'll get really into our important satisfaction analysis in a few moments. When we asked residents or respondents to the survey really to indicate what type of organization CFPUA is, respondents are really seemingly there's a group that are unsure of what type of organization you are. Most folks indicated a public government agency operating a no-profit. 1 in 4 indicated I'm just not sure, and about 1 in 5 indicated it's a private profit-making company. So we've got about half of our residents, or approximately half of our customers in the community, just not even sure what type of organization that you are. We asked residents to also, or excuse me, respondents to the survey to also rate the satisfaction with a huge list of CFPUA services. This is kind of your major buckets of services that you're providing to residents. And I've highlighted the items that are going to be in the top of our important satisfaction analysis so we can kind of draw the connection and build the analysis together. So the items that are at the top, again, I brought this up at the very beginning of the presentation, but again, it's taste of the drinking water, how well you're planning for future water and sewer needs, safety of your water, and water service charges. And you'll see down there as well, sewer service charges also received an elevated very dissatisfied response. And again, we'll help contextualize some of that later, but anytime you're asking about service charges or value received for fees, those are the areas where we're going to see elevated dissatisfied responses in most of these surveys. So again, what we want to do with the important satisfaction analysis is really base your decision making, or at least base the analysis on two important criteria for making decisions. Where's our performance lacking? And two, which of these are really the highest in priorities for your household? And so reliability of water service was not a top priority for improvement because it received really strong satisfaction rankings. But how well you're planning for the future water and sewer service needs of the community is a top priority because it received also lower levels of satisfaction and higher levels of importance. So as you can see here, all of our top priorities actually had at least 1 in 4 respondents selected as one of their first 3 choices for the highest priorities for you over the next 5 years. And so again, safety of drinking water, water service charges, how well you're planning for the future, and taste of your water. When we talk about the important satisfaction analysis, again, this is based on the importance or the priority placed on the item and the satisfaction rating. So what we're really looking for is items that are below average satisfaction, above average priority rating. And what we get is this particular table. And so the important satisfaction rating is out there from the second column from the right. Moving to your left, important satisfaction rating. The highest one is safety of your drinking water. And while we had 37% satisfaction, which is not extremely low, it's really the most important item by far and away at 81% compared to the other items, hovering about 25% or 26% in our high priorities. When we get down to the yellow and the green is really those items that you're performing at such a pace that it'd really take a lot for you to kind of find those items as a high priority for improvement in the future. But if we don't maintain current service levels in terms of reliability or clarity or water pressure, we could eventually see those items start to find their way into the priorities list and eventually climbing this list. But I've highlighted the 4 items at the top there in either that lighter red or the darker red to indicate to you those are the top priorities for improvement, primarily based on the fact that overall satisfaction was towards the bottom. 14, 15, 18, and 17 are those satisfaction ranks. And then their important ranks are 1, 3, 4, and 5. So they're the 5 most important items, some of the 5 lowest rated items, and that's why they come out to be our top priorities for improvement. And the analysis suggests that if you're to improve satisfaction in these areas, we should improve overall or generalized satisfaction with the organization as a whole in the future.
Hey, Ryan,
Now to contextualize some of this, please, yeah.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions with this? Because I know it's a little bit unusual.
Does everybody understand what we're doing here? Questions so far?
Okay, keep going.
All right, great. So what I want to do is, some of these ratings look poor, safety of our drinking water service charges at 35% satisfaction. But what I really want to do is help contextualize these results for you. And that's what ETC Institute can really do best. So this is the satisfaction with the water and sewer services that we were able to compare to our Atlantic regional and our U.S. averages. These are national surveys that we administer once a year to residents throughout the country, and then we split them up into regional averages or regional samples and the U.S. sample as well. The area that I'd like you to focus on most is the sewer service charges and water service charges down at the bottom. As I indicated earlier, anytime we're allowing residents to indicate, how satisfied are you with what we're asking you to pay, that's the area where we're going to get hit hardest in terms of overall satisfaction. Now, when we look above those 2 items to the taste and smell of the water, we're actually performing significantly below our Atlantic and U.S. averages for those particular items. But when we get back up to water pressure, reliability of your service in both water and sewer, we're performing, head and shoulders above some of those areas. And so reliability kind of goes along with some of our safety measures and things like that. Residents are really satisfied with what you're doing at an overall clip, but they're telling us what other residents across the country tell us about the sewer service charges. Now, the smell and the taste of the water is likely something regional from what I've understood over the last few years doing a lot of these surveys nationally. In Colorado, you get a more minerally taste. In Southern Florida, there's a different taste to your water. And so kind of based on the source of your water and where you're from, there's not a lot that organizations can do to change the smell and taste of your water. But what you can do is begin to set the expectations or set the bar for respondents. And hopefully in a future survey, we've set the bar, set the expectations, and we see more of kind of an alignment with our national averages. What I also did is, because we perform so many community surveys across the country with many provided, for water or sewer service providers themselves, I found 25 organizations who regularly conduct surveys with us, including 10 of those being water or sewer providers, and I pulled together another average for us to review. And I was actually a little bit surprised by the first two items, the reliability of your water and sewer services, because some of the communities for which are included in this average are just high performing organizations who are continually tracking this particular key metric for their organization. So this is really a bit of a surprise to me, but you're performing extremely well when we talk about reliability of your water and sewer services, the water pressure at your home. We're actually more aligned when it comes to water and sewer service charges. But again, that story is still being told where we're still significantly below when it comes to smell and taste of the drinking water. So I think contextually, the organization's comparing very well. When we talk about our overall priorities for improvement based on the important satisfaction analysis, these are common water service charges, making sure that you're planning for our future needs, taste of the water and safety are all items that would be expected based on some of the history of your organization, as well as the regional aspects in our comparisons here. I also wanted to show this slide. We asked a question on the survey to indicate, to us, which of these items are you really satisfied with in terms of value? And these are all of our utility providers. So electric, gas, sewer, drinking water, and cable TV, internet. And as you can see, sewer and drinking water kind of fall right in the middle there, but folks do think that their water bill might be a little bit high in terms of value when they're asked on this particular scale rating. But for the most part, you're performing pretty well, both in sewer and drinking water. When we go to our next slide, we're asking respondents to indicate how much do they think they pay for each gallon of drinking water they received. Most of our respondents don't know. So again, going back to the value, 30% are dissatisfied, but 50% aren't even sure how much they're paying for each gallon of drinking water. And we've kind of got responses from all over the place here, but only 15% of respondents indicated about 1 penny per gallon. But when we asked the follow-up question, question 16, we had about 65% of respondents tell us that less than 1 penny a gallon, or 0.009 cents per gallon, is a good value. So we've been able to educate about 1,000 customers using the survey, but we should continue to use some of this messaging to help educate respondents in terms of, we know a lot of you aren't sure how much your drinking water is per gallon. Would you know that it's a lot cheaper than you're probably assuming that it is? Majority of folks think that it's a good value, but we still have about 1 in 4 saying, hey, I'm just not sure. So if we're going to message on that, it really needs to have some local comparisons to make sure respondents know, hey, that is a good value when I'm talking comparatively to other communities nearby. We also wanted to bring up the PFAS or the Gen X situation. We asked a few questions on the survey. In particular, we wanted to know just generally, what have you done? What do you know? Question 4 asked respondents to indicate how familiar they are with the issues of PFAS contamination. We had about 53% of respondents say they're familiar with the topic, 7% say they're not, 40% say I'm somewhat familiar. So most folks have at least heard of the topic, about 93% of those folks. When we asked what are the following steps did they do, or did they think that were correct in addressing the PFAS pollution, there's some alignment issues with this particular chart for some reason. I didn't notice that previously, but those items up at the top there, 49% GAC filters are removing Gen X and other PFAS compounds. About half of respondents believe that. But at the very bottom, we have about 31% of respondents who said, I'm just not sure. I haven't heard about the new GAC filters. So we asked, which of the following steps do you think are correct? About half of folks said that filters are removing the compounds. 1 in 3 indicated I haven't heard about these filters. Another 1 in 3 said they're removing Gen X and other PFAS compounds, and another 30% said the GAC filters came online, but more treatment is still required. So there's still some concerning messaging, some concerning ideas that are going on with the respondents. They're just not 100% set on what you've done to address the PFAS pollution. When we asked how satisfied respondents are, though, on the other half, we had about 50%, of respondents, 51% of respondents indicate that they're satisfied. About 1 in 3 said they're neutral, and about 1 in 5 said that they're dissatisfied with what you're doing. So there is some issues with what respondents maybe know to be true, but we saw that with the price of a gallon of water, drinking water in your community. We also saw that with the value received for the services. And so we're seeing satisfaction here. About half of folks are satisfied, another half are kind of giving you a passing grade. But there are still some folks that are just a little bit unsure about what we've done or what we're continuing to do to make sure drinking water is safe. And that's also one of our top priorities for improvement. When we talk about billing, this was one of the other purposes of the survey, was to understand, do folks know who we are and how we're managing their billing? So we wanted to ask respondents, who pays your bill? And we wanted to also ask a couple of other questions. So we've got a whole section devoted to this. And about 98% or most of our respondents to the survey indicated that they or their household pays their bill. Only 2% of our respondents said a landlord or someone living at the service address pays the bill. When we asked when you get your monthly bill, what are you looking for first? Total amount due and the due date are the primary items. The amount of water used is up there as well, but all of those items are kind of related to the total value charged in that particular bill, which was one of the areas where we had lower levels of satisfaction. But again, contextually, we're right along the lines of other providers across the country. When we asked, does your bill include charges for solid waste, trash, and recycling? About half of respondents said yes, about half said no. 13% said I'm not sure. Overall, when I looked at these differences, there were very limited differences among the two respondent groups of the yes, my bill includes solid waste charges, and no, my bill doesn't. And I wanted to just do a quick look at that just to make sure that there were no major differences or perception-related issues, because folks that have the solid waste or stormwater on their bill are going to have higher bills than those folks that are just getting the water services. And we asked what is, and again, kind of a perceptions related item, but in question 18A, we asked, what is CFPUA's role in providing your solid waste and stormwater services? About half of respondents indicated that CFPUA is responsible for billing and delivering the services. About 30% indicated that you're only providing billing, and about 1 in 5 indicated they're just not sure.
Yes.
Sorry, thanks, Ryan. Were we able to tease out who's in the city and who's not in the city? I missed that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we
So the
actually,
only people that are actually getting both.
correct. So if you said no, that you weren't getting, you didn't have trash or stormwater, then you didn't answer this question.
So on,
Yep.
the question is trash, but it's just more than solid.
I'm sorry, what? Oh, it was in parentheses. It said solid waste and it said trash inside. Any other questions before we go on? Go ahead, Ryan.
All right. Along that billing lines, we asked if folks were aware that CFPUA offers electronic billing. About 53% indicated yes, but I choose not to get the electronic bill. That's one of the higher rates of selection I've seen for that particular item. About 1 in 3 indicate they receive their bill electronically, and about 17 or 1 in 5 respondents indicated no, I either would like to receive that bill electronically or no, I don't want to receive it electronically. So there looks like there is some conversion that we could take place to bump up the yes, I receive my bill electronically in the future. But it seems like about half of the population is just not interested in that e-bill. When we talk about communication, this is going to be one of the key pieces to make sure that we can help, address some of the messaging here and make sure folks feel confident in terms of safety or reliability of our services, make sure folks understand the value that they're actually receiving from the service and things like that. We asked respondents if they'd seen, read, or heard any ads, social media posts, or public service messages recently related to the organization. About half of respondents again said yes, and half said no, with as few in that don't know or not sure category. So fewer than half of respondents indicated that they had heard anything recently from your organization.
Brian, let me stop you there first. Let's go back to that slide. So obviously we would want to have that yes go up, right? But I also think it's important to put it in perspective. So for example, J.D. Power does surveys of large utilities that serve 400,000 or more people every year. One of the questions they asked the customers of those utilities is, have you ever received, or do you recall receiving communications from your utilities? And the overall response there is 30%. So while that 45% yes, we want to bring it up, I think in perspective, actually we're doing above average in terms of how we're able to reach people with our. So go ahead, Ryan.
All right. So we asked which of the following messages do folks recall? And again, this is just 45% of our sample. So only those who answered yes were asked which of the following messages or campaigns do you call? Most folks, the new GAC filters to treat the Gen X and other PFAS. And then the other item was really about half of folks saying keeping fats, oils, and grease out of the drain and sewer system. And then significantly fewer respondents indicating that they'd seen any of the other items. And again, if you extrapolate this out to the entire population, you could really cut some of these percentages almost in half to say only about 40% of respondents have seen of overall respondents had seen some of these items just based on the selection of yes, no here. When we go to question 23, where do you typically go for local news and information about CFPUA and other local issues? Most folks are going to traditional news media, local newspaper, local TV, radio. About 1 in 3 going to online news sites, and 1 in 4 going to the organization websites, such as your website, cfpua.org, with fewer respondents indicating social media, text, emails, Nextdoor, and any of those other social media accounts. When we asked what topics you should really be focusing on to educate and inform customers, it's really about the safety and reliability of the drinking water and the water quality. Now, those are really the top 2 items, along with how we're planning for our future water and sewer demand. So respondents are really telling us that there's some alignment in our top priorities and what we want to be hearing more about in the future. To summarize, overall satisfaction with your services is extremely high. I think the contextual comparisons help kind of put a click on that show you we're performing extremely well when it comes to some of those core items that are comparable. You should continue to message on the reliability and safety of the future water, sewer, and sewer services in the community. It's going to be a really important topic for respondents moving forward. Although they're generally satisfied, responses suggest there could be a trust issue, safety being so high at the top of the priority investment ratings, but folks are pretty okay with the reliability of the service and things like that. It would suggest that folks are maybe still kind of having a trust issue with the organization overall based on some of the PFAS issues. When we continue our high performance, it will promote trust. So if we're able to digest these results, spit out some output measures, or at least make some adjustments in terms of some of our service levels to help address some of this. If we're messaging on these items and we have continued high performance, we should be able to promote more trust in the community moving forward. And targeted messaging campaigns could potentially help keep customers educated and informed on your services and activities, especially related to some of the reliability measures, the cost measures, and the value measures, making sure that respondents are really truly aware of how much value they're actually receiving from your services. With that, I'll take any questions.
Hey, Ryan, I can't remember which slide it was. The one that showed the respondents, only 2% were not responsible for paying their bills. To me, I interpreted that one, right? Go back. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I interpret that as, those are renters, basically, within our community. So, of the respondents here, we're really talking about, yeah, in the building portion, 98% of people own houses.
So I think that what this really speaks to is that the universe that we chose from was our residential customers. And so residential customers, if I'm on a master meter, say, at an apartment complex, I'm not going to be among that group because we really don't have a way to reach you. So I think this and some of the other data you saw was probably is reflective of that.
Which I get in a lot of the billing issues, but a lot of these perception issues, which is partly why we had this done, trying to reach out to the community to figure out what's going on, how we perceive, et cetera. I'm just curious to know what your reaction is, we're not reaching in those perception questions a large part of our community. That's, am I wrong in that, or I'd love to hear you.
Yeah, that would be that'd be a way oversimplification of this particular response, because not all renters are going to have their landlord pay the water bill. There'd be a high proportion of renters, most likely based on, personal experience and other survey experience, where you're receiving the bill in your name at your rental address. So I think that would be kind of something that we would maybe be able to pull out here, but no, I wouldn't say that 98% of the sample is renters.
And I think this is also reflective of it may be a rental at a single family home, for example. And so therefore, I'm probably going to get that bill. Would that be correct, Christie?
Just a point of clarification, I have a property management firm and properties. I don't think the landlord or the management company pays the utility bill for a single one of those tenants. And I believe all tenants have their own utility bill that converts over upon the beginning of their tenancy. And y'all correct me to do some multifamily development, but I mean that's pretty rare to see a whole meter system where there's not individual meters per unit. So that's kind of gone by the wayside from a multifamily development standpoint. So I think it's probably a really small data set that you're considering.
Who would get the survey of those? Would you, as the overall landlord?
No, we go to the bill.
This went to the service address.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thanks.
Because the beginning of the school year, or whatever, everybody's down here at CFPUA getting their account set up. So it's only a rare and somewhat antiquated. I know neighborhoods next to me, some of them on a master meter because they didn't want to put in individual meters. So I think you're getting renters and actually these simple homes.
So there's a graphic Q30 that shows that 92% of the people we talk to are in single family.
Right. I think the question I was hearing, or at least kind of the underlying concern was, are we missing, is our data off because we're not getting response from people who live in multifamily housing?
We're also getting 9% homeowners and 10% renters.
Right, so does that skew the data in any way that we need to be discussing?
It is possible. I mean, I think that would be something we would look at as subsequent surveys. We would need to see how we are able to actually reach out to people who may be behind that master meter.
First 230, I can't remember. Is that respondents or is that who actually received the survey? The survey went out to all residential customers. Correct?
All residential customers at the service address.
Right, but then the respondents were just primarily single-family residents, right? 90% of those were
Correct.
So it's really, again, in my mind, it's perception questions. I mean, I get the building stuff, and I think that's kind of appropriate here. But I'm curious again about a lot of perceptions about CFPUA stuff of that cohort that we're not reaching with this. And maybe you're right, maybe now we can use this survey to figure that out and then find another survey to how to target them. But I think it's an important part of our community.
Right, I think that would be something we would look at in the survey what is the best way to reach out to people who we are missing because we're only for residential customers?
I would ask Ryan to chime in on this and see what his thoughts are. In the perception world, we're getting a statistically representative sample of the demographics of our community. The only differentiation here that we're unsure of is do people that live in multifamily housing feel fundamentally different about us than people who don't. Ron, do you have any thoughts about that from your life experience in surveys?
Yeah, we ask that question occasionally. I'm trying to think about that just a little bit. I really think that's probably way too in the weeds for what we're thinking here, but just based on general perceptions, I can't imagine that there'd be too much of a difference. Specifically, I'm talking about statistically significant differences. I have a hard time suggesting.
Brian, I would think there might be, I mean, the most obvious thing that comes to me is the affordability issue, right? Because more than likely, if you're renting, you may be, your income being less than if you own a house.
Well, I'd be hesitant to suggest that just based on high-rise new developments. So,
You're right.
Can I just ask Paul and Ryan, Ryan, is it, in your experience, the majority of respondents, are the majority of respondents typically single-family residents that are also homeowners?
No, there's no typicalness to that. What we had was 40 respondents in multifamily apartment buildings, 40 respondents in a duplex, triplex, or quadplex, 9 rural residential respondents, and the vast majority, about 90% of our overall respondents in single-family residences. That'd give us enough to do some crosstabs to cut that data up. But I think we'd be hard pressed, to say that there'd be major significant differences. I'm not exactly sure what perception area you're talking about, but I would definitely suggest that would not be the case.
I think the overall data set, is that a typical breakdown of respondents?
And other surveys.
Other surveys, not this survey.
That would really be dependent upon the community. A more suburbanized community, no, we would expect a lot more single family, over 90% single family. So it would really depend on the makeup of that community and what, percentage of the households would be multifamily versus single family. The only area where census tends to track that would be the owner occupied housing rate, I believe. But again, I don't know if we asked own versus rent. I'm trying to look through the report here, so. Yeah, we did not ask the own versus rent question. We can cross tab the type of household dwelling, question 30 on the survey, to see if there's any significant differences, and I'd be happy to do that when I get back to the office later this week.
All right. Any other questions?
So we do have the cross tabs, if anybody's interested in really a deep dive that breaks down the responses by various demographic groups. If you're interested in that, just email me and let me know, and I will email it to you. Other than that, Ryan, thanks a lot for joining us.
All right, thank you so much. If you have any follow-up or need anything else, just let us know.
Right.
Thanks so much.
I would like to, if I might, take one privilege, Mr. Chair, and note that this is the first survey specific to CFPUA. A lot of data here, a lot to digest and think about. We're going to come back over the next weeks and months in committee to discuss what we think comes from this survey. There are other things that we are aware of that are also true. While this survey today is representative of our overall customers, there are customer classes and demographics that are documented nationwide having very different feelings about water and sewer service than the broader community. An example that I keep in my mind all the time is our immigrant community and our African American community in the United States. Survey after survey have lower opinions of service than the overall community demographics. Much of that is based on historic experience with those services. So staff, we keep that in mind when we do our messaging, and we'll bring forward to our communications chair and communications committee some new or revised or refined approaches based on the survey.
Ken, I hope also, this is just a general comment, and I'm not meaning to throw a hand grenade in the middle of the room. But I see and heard in there the issue again of tying ourselves to the trash pickup and the city services to CFPUA. I believe provides some confusion. And there was one data point there that 49% think that they get their trash service from CFPUA. You know, I know through some education we can correct that, but it continues to be a dragging influence on CFPUA, not only in the perception of providing trash services, which is wholly unrelated to that, but also in the physical billing of it, as we've talked about before at this board, that when people get behind and they make partial payments, the first hunk of money always goes to pay off the trash part of it, stormwater services. And that will continue to be an issue with CFPUA, as that's always there. You know, and I know it's probably going to take an act of Congress at this point to decouple that or to find a way to make it more equal. So again, I do not mean to throw a hand grenade in the room on this, but I think it's an issue worth discussing to try and figure out, at the very least, how we can educate people so they understand CFPUA is not picking up your trash.
I can't remember what the percentage was, but a lot of people read their bill. I mean, that's one thing that data, a lot of people read the bill, and the bill is, I mean, I've always looked, but I look a lot closer now, and it's pretty clear. This is your CFPUA charge. This is your city of Wilmington charge. I mean, I don't know how much clearer you may highlight it if you want.
There are potential communication strategies that we can bring forward. And that's a subset of overall communication strategies. I'll go to one that is one of my personal concerns, and that's the taste of water. What can we do to help people understand the regional aspects of water taste? And then what can we do physically? And we have some plans, for example, to change the water source at Monterey Heights. There's clearly differences in taste between the sources. So what can we do in terms of operational changes, which are probably minor, in terms of being able to move that needle very far? And what can we do to educate over time? Education is a marathon. We're talking 5-10 years of continuous commercials. And you saw that multimedia, the TV media, the radio media was the primary means of people acquiring information from us. Vaughn, how long have we been actually engaging from that communications channel?
Well, we started really small at around 2020. It was pandemic related, but then when we had success from that, we've expanded. And now, through all channels, we're probably spending about $125,000.
So we've just broached the threshold of using those communication channels to start changing perceptions or educating. Probably in another 3 years to see if we can do that.
Thanks. Moving on to committee reports. Executive committee, minutes of the September 6th meeting are in your packet. We have a few action items that we need to vote on.
Yes. The first action item is the residential connection interlocal agreement, which is in your packet. And Is there a desire to have a conversation about what the residential interlocal agreement ILA is? We have our legal team here, and I can certainly provide some background. We previously discussed our relationship with New Hanover County. This is part of our short, middle, and long-term strategy together to try to address PFAS contamination in unserved and underserved communities. This particular ILA would allow us to take the funding that is flowing from New Hanover County and connect properties, residential properties that are already immediately adjacent to our infrastructure. The program, we would try to stand it up by January. There would be a communications activity in partnership with the county to let approximately 1,000 residential property owners know about the program. It is a first come, first served program that we would then prioritize, and funding generously provided by New Hanover County will probably cover anywhere from 50 to 60 connections this year.
What was the numbers on that? Connections, New Hanover County's graciously put the bill on that.
$500,000.
And, you know, the devil's in the details is always, this is the first step. I get that you school me. It's over and over. The issues I just wanted to raise again so everybody hears is, you know, is the application, something as simple as the application. We don't have an application form because there's just a touch of a race that's involved here. We know that some of the communities, especially in Rock Hill and also, I guess now Scottsville, are aware of this. And they are primed and ready, and they're all standing there at the starting gate ready to go because they want to be in first, as you just said. This is only going to fund 50 or 60 homes, you know, for their connections. And they're going, okay, we're ready, and there's no application process. You know, and there's a sense, cynical nature kind of drifts in that application process could be leaked to those that are given preferential treatment. And all of a sudden, you're going to have people coming in and going, oh, the 60 have already been given. How do we stop that from happening? I just wish that as we did this, we had that application process in hand. As you told me, it's a process that we have to walk through with our legal staff.
Well, it's not just legal, it's how do we map out this process? And the first step is to have an agreement between the city, the county and CFPUA in how this would be structured. We weren't sure until we had finished this agreement whether it would be a first come, first served structure or whether that we would manage, or whether it would be some other prioritization structure managed by the county. Now that that has been worked out as a proposal, this is a first come, first served structure that we will manage. We have a signed agreement. Our next task as staff is to turn the vision into reality and to avoid the pitfalls, but one of which you noted. How do we avoid favoritism? How do we avoid leaks or unscrupulous or inappropriate sharing of data to put some in front of others? And all of that is things that we've got to manage inside the building this process. That's why we gave ourselves 6 months. So we were always telegraphing that we wouldn't have a program ready to go until January.
I'd like to add that list of priorities, then those people who are higher information, people who are familiar and comfortable with using a computer or even their phone, versus those who may not have either access to computers, etc. That when this application process, which I'm sure will be online, that when it hits, that those people, go, oh, great. I live in my $400,000 house. I'm on. Boom. And I'm rolling on, as opposed to those who are scrambling, going, I'll call my son or my daughter and they'll help me get this done. You know where I'm headed with that, yeah. We gotta set up something, so we're gonna look lousy. And I don't know the answer, if I did, I'd bring it forward. That's a real pitfall.
It is, and a part of the complication is we've also committed to the county that we would have multiple channels for folks to make applications. Well, a paper application is going to be slower than an electronic application or a phone application. It's just the nature of the communication channel. And our commitment is completed applications will be prioritized based on when we receive them and when we verify that they were complete. So, yeah, people who use the paper channel are going to have a harder time than folks that use others.
Right.
Would it be possible to address Ralph's concerns that we have an application period and then we randomize or lottery? I know we said first come, first served.
That's what's in here, is we set it up first come, first served, is that's what was negotiated with county staff. And that's the guidance that we received from county staff.
Well, I see you having a help desk only with someone dedicated to helping individuals coming in, whether it's online or paper. I think we need to cut out the bureaucracy. It shouldn't take that long. If I need water today, I don't need to wait 6 months down the road to get water. I mean, it should not take that long. We have too many intelligent folks working in both organizations that should go to streamline the process exactly. And I understand Rob's concerns. And to me, it's something that should have been thought about on the front end for sure. And understand the history of this organization itself when it comes to equity and diversity and inclusion. It gives me pause. It gives me great pause. And again, you got two folks in the county sitting here, and we've been very clear for a long time about what area we want to see served. There's been no lack of clarity there. We've been very clear. So I don't understand why there's not clarity in what we expect. Again, we're partnering with the organization, putting in the money, just like we did at Monterey House and Heritage Park, just like we're doing for how the church will, with an expectation. And my thing is that I expect you all to meet that, but not take 6 months to do it. We have folks that are in a crisis. We have folks in Walnut Hills that now have no water service because of issues. And water is a public safety. It's a public health. I mean, you can't push it on. But again, putting up $500 million, I would expect experience. It's not like we haven't been here for a long time. This is not like this is the first rodeo.
Those are fair observations. If I might, the conditions that we just shared were those that were shared to us by the county. So modifications of these conditions are things that we encourage you as our representatives to do. If you're concerned about what we laid out, we'll very easily pivot and accept any modifications that the county would like us to make in terms of prioritization and timing. But this is as much coming from our county leadership as it is being reflected back in our negotiations.
Who are you dealing with in the county?
The executive leadership.
So this wasn't a vote you guys put on, this was coming straight out of staff.
And it's a recognition that the county leadership, the executive leadership team, they're wrestling with the same things that are going on the table. How do we do something different? How do we do it more expediently? We couldn't develop together a strategy beyond what's proposed.
Like Rob, like Jonathan, that process is going to get flawed. I feel like some of the people, like in the Rock Hill area, that are not up to snuff with computers are going to get left very behind. Unless we go out to the community, and we have some kind of meeting so that they can come and we do it for them, some kind of way, help them on computers register or do the application, I think that it's just gonna go right over their head. And they're gonna be scratching their head and going right, what just happened? Well, what just happened was, they aren't up to snuff with computers. We are saying right now that it's gonna take computers to do the applications, and those people, they won't get worse.
We'll take that into account as we design this system, and I've heard some good advice from the table. And I have some very talented department heads who are going to be tasked with helping us turn these ideas into reality. So we've heard the ideas that you shared, and let's see if we can't create a process that recognizes those concerns.
There's a story I heard about a woman who received a turkey for Thanksgiving from this organization, and they were all excited to bring this turkey. And the faces. She said, "You assume that I have soap." I was told you can't cook turkey. If you're doing something good, really, you're not really helping the problem. You're not helping the problem. My dad, 70 years, former county commissioner, lived in Weaver's Acres, same situation. Man didn't use computers. So what does he do? You gotta figure out a work around it. You have folks, again, my dad, they kind of know that he doesn't use a computer. Facing the same thing in his neighborhood when they got water and sewer all around him. So if you rely on technology only, I think we're missing the boat.
In regards to the modifications, application process, for the county commissioners on that. So you're the ground on what the residents want and need, so certainly defer to you. I'd have a question that's completely separate, and it's really just for my education probably, but it's item 4A, private installation costs versus designated water station. What is that? That's just how we actually.
So this is actually the new item 3 that was added to the agenda. So our discussion is around item 2. This is the first one. And we walked this one in. This is the modification to the agenda. So we actually bringing 2 ILX. The first one, the one at discussion on the table, is residential connection. And it's found on page.
I apologize, I probably confused everybody. That's what I did.
I was like, where is any of that?
Oh, you and that reading stuff. Come on, a little bit more.
My bad, I passed it out too
So
soon.
the residential connection outlay, what I'm hearing is, this is just the first step. And I know we were talking about expediency, however, we're also talking about some differences of opinion and modification. So if we approve the residential ILA, there's still time to take, if we do this vote, that doesn't just fire a starting gun without taking into account some of these opinions.
Oh, we're definitely going to design a process that takes into account concerns of the residents.
So that process come back to the board.
Could that
It
process
can.
come back?
It can.
So who on our team do we need to talk to?
Probably me, and.
On the county team.
Oh, okay.
The county team.
Okay. I'd start with the county manager's office.
Anyone in particular we have?
Ms. Lorper has been our primary contact.
Got
It's
it.
been an excellent partner.
Got it, all I need.
So I need a motion to approve. As a word, so we make any
It's up to the board. You can, motion to approve the contract with the provisions for, how it is administered to come back to the board.
Yeah, so I would move that we add language about the finalization is pending one further vote by the board.
Yeah.
Pending those discussions.
Yeah.
So let's amend it to add language saying
motion
that
approved with one additional review by the board.
Yes,
additional review, one further vote by the board.
as to how it is administered.
As to how
Approve the concept of the contract. and continue working with it, but come back, you're asking them to come back to the board to, approve the administration process.
So we're approving the concept and coming back with some.
Yeah, that is the administration contract.
I'll just continue a date certain. Shut down.
That's okay too.
So,
To remove the strike language. I guess.
Maybe I'm discussing that. No. I think it needs to be done, but I think you guys need to be comfortable with it. Just.
I'm suggesting that we just continue the item until we can go back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Talk to Jessica and Chris.
Slow down the process.
Yeah, that's the discussion.
It was, you can ask staff to continue working on it as it is. That does slow down the process by not having a contract by a month.
it does, and understanding what we're designing to. So, what I'm hearing is, I'm apologize, you want to?
There is no, we're not voting to approve a contract here, so I would slow down the process. In the next meeting, we then have a fully ratified contract that we're supporting.
So this interlocal agreement laid out a process of first come, first served, of which what I'm hearing is we need to bring back to you the particulars of that process. Now, if it is not a first come, first served process, the contract has to change. If it is just a concern about, all right, how do we make that first come, first served process fair, equitable, and attainable to all, then that's actually an internal CFPUA activity under the ILA. So I want to get some clarification about the concern.
I guess for me, if I show up, I'm first in line, you help me. If I'm second in line, I show up, you help me. You know, whether I have a computer in my hand, I have in my hand, or a piece of paper, you help me. That's my expectation, you know. If I go to buy a widget and I'm paying my money, I expect the salesperson to help me. That's all I expect.
And we're going to ensure in the process that CFPUA is designing, that we're taking into account the concerns of citizens. The actual ILA, though, is an agreement between the city and county that says the funding will be provided, CFPUA will design and implement the process. So the ILA, as it's written, sounds sufficient to move forward. And what I'm hearing is before we finalize the process, that entire process needs to come back to a committee and to the board to make sure that we have met the expectations of the committee and the board, relevant committee. Making sure that to the maximum extent practical, we're offering multiple channels for folks to have the same opportunity to put in an application and be fairly considered.
Will that move the process back 1 month or two? Because if we have to wait till the board meeting and then subsequent committee meetings.
But is there, if we approve the motion as amended, I'm looking at it from there's also a practical standpoint. It turns CFPUA, the funding's there, and tell me if I'm wrong, it turns CFPUA loose to set up the process as far as the connections, because they're going to be paying for all the connections, all the plumbing to the house. So they're going to set that process up, the practical in the field process, which that will be they'll be working on that over the next 30 days instead of sitting dormant for 30 days. So we're just going to be, that'll be moving forward. And what I'm hearing as the only thing that comes back to us is who, once we decide who gets the service, you know, how we prioritize that. And do the work, and the work in the field has already been planned for instead of sitting dormant for another 30 days.
Well, I would go with Jessica and the amendments.
Right.
She worked for the board, and at least that would give us continuity.
Give the engineering.
Yeah, so, yeah, then it won't sit, you know what I mean? You don't look like you call as long as
The one thought I have is, I heard Ken say very carefully, is we put this process out first come, first served. In my mind, I want to have this discussion with Kudre and, our county leadership about whether or not we want to target it. And just based this on my own experience, a month and a half ago, standing in front of 30 people in Rock Hill and saying that the county dedicated $500,000. I have 30 people in Rock Hill who are now standing in line, waiting for, how do I do this? So I already have, as Jonathan just said, they're already there waiting, but we don't have an application process. And I feel like they're gonna get end run, if that's an actual word. I'm gonna have difficulty sleeping.
Going back to Rock Hill.
First, but just sleeping at night, knowing that these people are fully informed now. And part of what I said, because they were wary as I left that meeting, saying, well, what do we do to make sure this happens? And I said, one thing is you show up at our meetings. And that's what's happening here today. These people are trying to follow the process that we're laying out, even though we don't have a process now. And I don't know that maybe in thinking this, I bend towards fairness across the board, but in this particular case, maybe targeting, because that's really what we want to do with such a limited number, 50 to 60 homes being done for those who need it the most. Maybe it's best to target. But now I'm trying to design in the middle of a board meeting, which is horrible. No, we don't do that. And that's where I'm thinking more conversation is, do we want to shift our philosophy on this? And what Ken's saying, if we go ahead and approve the first part of this, we may be closing that door, that we're just going to go with first come, first serve. That's what I'm thinking of this. And that's why you see this, move.
Yeah.
There's always room to amend the agreement, but we probably need to get started as soon as possible on designing some kind of intake process. So if there's still conversation that needs to be had with the county about how to prioritize, and that it might be something different than first come, first serve, then we probably should table this agreement until that's resolved.
I would like to see it move forward and have the work done, but what I'm hearing here is the problems on that back end are gonna be a whole lot worse than the 30 days you save on the front end.
That's the thing in my head.
Is it possible to write language that says we approve this process and as long as the county commissioners on our board approve it as it is amended at the county staff level, as long as those two people approve it, then we're good to go. There's no way.
Can't strike out.
No, you can, yeah, you can, yeah.
Because if earlier, what Ken was saying was, minority, participation in that survey was low because of historically what African Americans and people of color get from organizations like us, and they get the short end of the stick, and so you said, so I just don't want that to happen, and those people get penalized, just like Bob's saying. I'm puzzled about what our next move should be, so we don't get confused.
So I don't want to speak for the county staff. This is my impression in conversations. There is a great deal of concern about resolving the issues of the communities that have come forward, which includes Rock Hill. But there are other communities that have also come forward that have similar concerns. And county staff were trying to decide, all right, how to prioritize with county funds. So what came from that was first come, first served structure. With the burden of building that structure falling on CFPUA, we agreed we'd build it. And we would come back to this board before we implement it, make sure that we had gotten all the feedback and you had heard everything that we were trying to do to ensure fairness and equity for all county residents that might want to apply. Layered on top of that there's a problem with the first come, first served basis, that there should be some other selection basis. We shared with the county that we have no means or expertise within our organization to offer any other basis of selection. For example, we have no resources or expertise around our justice, our social justice selection processes, which are typically county functions. If there is some other selection methodology other than first come, first served, we probably can't administer the intake process. We'll either have to hire somebody or ask our partners with the county to administer that.
I think first come, first served works fine. It's just that on your end, you gotta be prepared to help folks, however they come.
And you have that commitment from us. We'll design something and bring it back to you and see if that meets that expectation. I'm hearing that we need to have somebody stationed at a location on a day certain where people can come that day at that hour and make application. And the first person will typically serve first and second. That might be a process.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, I'm just gonna be frank.
Please.
I would see all the people in Rock Hill get water first. And then whoever was next can get the water next. I mean, you know, so you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying because I feel, those people are struggling for a long time. And what's the other, Scott, but see, the people from Scott Hill, they just started complaining. You know what I mean? So the people from Rock Hill been complaining a year or more. And I've been out there to those meetings along with some other people from CFPUA. And getting people want more.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I don't know how that all works in the system, but I mean, there is something being said for Community Rock Hill. They have come to the meeting. They have done everything that they could do to promote, get in front of us. I mean, like they've done their part, like more than probably anybody else. And so I mean, I kind of see it a little bit too in that regard. Like they haven't been sitting on their hands. Like they've been proactive and working. And so they've almost been pioneering this initiative or this information. Because I mean, people call me every week wanting water, now. But they were, I mean, they put in the work and efforts. I don't know if that's possible, but.
Well, you understand, this is a side discussion we had, that I kept circling back to at our finance committee, executive committee, sorry, they're running together. But understand that what this particular agreement is you're helping, you have a certain amount of money, and you're helping the most, and getting word to the most available customers. And there's a certain amount of money that's going to be used up that where they're going to make that connection to the people who are directly in front, have CFPUA in their street yard. So if we go outside of that and say, let's take this $500,000 to go to the Rock Hill community, and all of a sudden you're going to have to deal with right-of-ways, infrastructure, expanding infrastructure, and it's a totally different animal, as you know, well know, and that $500,000 is not going to serve 50 people, it's not going to serve anybody. So this is almost like a good deed, doesn't it? Never goes unpunished. I mean, really, you see what we're talking about. So, and there's not a good answer. So,
I think if I could just add to that, I think in this case, the criteria, as you described, is those people that are adjacent to existing lines, which there are a number of it in Rock Hill that are currently like that. And that criteria would still be layered into this. But even with that, there are certainly
there's a next door neighbor in Rock Hill that doesn't have utility, they don't have the easement, and we can't serve them. It's gonna.
The things that we're getting to is that there's not enough money.
Right.
And so what we really have is a pilot program.
That's right.
Perhaps a pilot program can be targeted to one area that meets this criteria, that the guy, or the family that lives 2 doors down that is not adjacent, they don't have qualified for this pilot program. And then, but again, here we are are trying to design in a board meeting, and that never works. We're gonna miss something like that. I just think there needs to be more discussion, but I also get the whole government process of trying to move one baby step ahead, so we can kind of move this thing down the line. There's not enough money. The $500,000 is a drop in the bucket of what it's gonna take to get all the citizens of New Hanover County onto CFPUA water. We know that. It's gonna be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. This is the first step. And we have a group, again, in Rock Hill, who we've asked to be patient and follow the steps and, the bureaucratic system. And they have done that repeatedly. And that's where some of the emotional part of me falls down on and says, geez, maybe we call this a pilot program. It's focused on the Rock Hill there as more money gets into the system to address the larger problem.
Good. I suggest that we table this agreement, and what staff will do is make a commitment that we'll start the internal work to outline what a first come, first served program will look like. And get at least that far to assign roles and responsibilities and actions, give you something on that. And then give our county commission representatives an opportunity to go back and see if there is a desire at the county level to amend the agreement to add some kind of prioritization beyond first come, first served. If there is, then we can take that up at the next meeting. If not, then we won't have lost any time. And we can bring this back as a tabled item at your next meeting.
So, 500,000, right? Can we get $1 million? Well, I mean, you ask not, you get not, so look, I'm asking. Sure. So can we get $1 million?
I don't know, and I'm certainly not gonna commit here. We had zero before, and now we got $500,000. My book is still a lot of money in this particular problem. It's not a lot of money.
I'll ask a question. So I was going to ask a question. To me, it's no different than we identify a problem in the neighborhood when we have problem here. When we solve the problem, and we have a problem in Martin Hills and problem application. When we solve the problem in that neighborhood. And it was really some need. We solve the problem. The fact that those folks are also outside of their neighborhoods, contaminating water. We identify the problem on how to shelter wells. We're finding water sewer there. You know what the problem is? Why do we create more problems? You know, we don't have a problem. Being more than you go to the world is not being fixed. To me, it's a simple. Solve the first thing first, you do have a fixation.
Yeah. So if you don't have a second, it fails for lack of a second.
So the motion will do what Ken just said. Just to table. If John, make a motion to table. Right, so we'll do.
You're amending your motion.
Yeah, yes.
Any discussion? All in favor?
So the second walk-in, sir. Yes. And again, thank you for letting us walk this in. We completed, and I want to compliment our attorney's team for completing this on Monday, if I believe that correct. Friday. Again, we had a multi-layered approach to trying to address the PFAS groundwater issue. This ILA covers one of those aspects. It is an agreement between the city and county, sorry, I keep saying city, between CFPUA and the county to work together to install water stations similar to those that we installed in Park, at locations to be identified by the county. Now, our responsibility in this agreement is on identification of a location where a water station will go that is adjacent to our infrastructure. We will install the water meter and the tap and make it ready to go for the county to partner with an entity at that location to put in the private infrastructure necessary to provide the full water station. It's slightly different than the last ILA. The last ILA, that ILA has CFPUA working to take identified residential customers and connect them to the system. So that's the public side and the private side. This ILA, our responsibility in it is to install the tap and meter to the property that the county staff will then work with the individual property owner to finish up the job to provide a water station. Questions? That's right.
County will designate areas and private property owners will then come to see if the areas that to be one area.
There's funding, I think, for up to 4 stations. The area that has the most discussion is the Rock Hill community area, and the county staff are working with nonprofits to close that private side loop, including who pays for the water used at the water station. We have been working with nonprofits that regularly provide funding to CFPUA Assist, or what used to be CFPUA Assist, to fund these water stations. So we've been trying to ensure that once the stations are installed, there is a nonprofit charity who at least will fund the water for a while.
Questions?
You don't want to identify the nonprofit who's going to pay for water.
I think that it's best to allow that nonprofit to identify themselves, and the representative for that is not here, she's on board.
It's pretty cool.
Yes, they're very good.
Motion approved. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, long range planning. Sense of the August 24th meeting in your packet. In the agenda was a resolution to approve the 2022 sports marketing budget. So now, basically, everything in your packet is an evaluation of our linear assets that was presented to us at our August meeting. Any questions? No. Finance. Yes.
Committee met, September 6th, and meeting notes in your packet. I'll ask Julian Fairclough to come and present our monthly financials.
Good morning. In our packet this month, we have June 30 numbers as well as the first month of this fiscal year. As you can see, the unassigned fund balance is at $60 million for the months ending June 30th, 2023. And in either October or November, we'll be bringing an item to you to discuss these additional revenues and how we'd like to use them to help reduce, a deficit in coming years. Like I said, that'll be when we wrap up the audit, and we anticipate that to be very shortly. And then this year, the only thing of note really are the transfers to the capital fund. You'll see that that's at 4.96. 4.23 of that was a direct transfer to the Southside Reserve as was designated in the budget this year. And then we also have June 30 actual revenues, and then this is through August 31st for the revenues. We're slightly ahead, but it's only 2 months in, so not too much to discuss. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you.
All right, next, ask Carl, come forward. We've got, several items here to, Carl's going to present, and then we need to vote on each item individually.
I'll ask Judy to do the technology. Good morning. We have the next three items. They are companion items. The first one is a $29 million, $485,000 contract for TA Loving Company for the Northern Regional Pump Station Phase B. And this particular project is identified here. It's a new pump station on North Carr Avenue with a 24-inch force main going around the airport on North Carr, Blue Clay Road, through the airport property, and eventually ending up at our Northside wastewater treatment plant. The project is supported by a $30 million ARPA grant that we had received in 2022. The project is divided into two phases. Again, this is Phase B. Phase A is all the way up to the northern part of the county, and we are taking bids on that next week. This infrastructure will support a number of county-funded projects that will connect to this line that are currently in design, that will provide sewer service to Holly Shelter Road, to Sidbury Road, and to the Greenview Ranches area. And that is all with county funding. We advertised this project. We received 3 bids. TA Loving was the low bidder at the indicated amount, and there is sufficient funding available pending a budget transfer, which is the next item. And we do need a vote on this item, and let me just cover the next 2 items, and then the vote can occur for all 3. The next one is the budget ordinance to dedicate sufficient funding for this project. The 30 million grant covers most of it. There was a little bit extra that was needed, and that's what the budget ordinance is for. And then the last item was a $1.5 million contract amendment with our engineer for this project to administer the construction and provide the construction inspection of this project over a 600-day period.
Included within that number.
The 30 million will cover and goes through the entire project. We need a little bit extra money because the 29 for the construction and the 1.5 is a little bit over 30.
I know, I feel like that ARPA money expires if you don't use it at a certain period. Is there any consideration that if we get delayed or?
The ARPA money must all be spent by December 31, 2026.
So that's a pretty good cushion.
So we have about a 12-month cushion right now, given it's about a 2-year construction period. But there's always unknowns with supply chain issues and things like that. So we wanted to make sure that we had a cushion in here to ensure that the project is reimbursed.
Yeah. But you feel pretty confident.
We've accelerated as much as we can, and we have a 12-month cushion, which should be enough.
Any other discussion?
So we need to take a vote on each of these
Separately, yes.
I need a motion to approve the $29,045,000 contract award to TA Loving, the Northern Regional Pump Station, Phase B.
Sorry.
Second.
Motion approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Second, we need a motion for the ordinance appropriating funds for the Northern Regional Pump Station Phase B project.
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thirdly, we need a motion for the $1.555 million contract note for the Raleigh engineers for the Northern Regional Pump Station Phase B.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. So, move on to item 6 to 8.
Yes, the next 3 items are associated with the Southside wastewater treatment plant. replacement and expansion project. The first item is a $13 million, $67,660 contract with Crowder Construction Company for this project to do the design and initial building of the facility. If you recall, back in December of 2022, the board approved a recommendation to procure this project through the design-build method. We released a request for qualifications for design-build teams in April. For this project, we received 2 proposals, and after a pretty lengthy evaluation and interview process, we recommended selection of Crowder Construction Company with Hazen & Sawyer as the design-build team for this project. This $13 million proposed contract is to cover the project up to 75% design, including value engineering that go along with that, constructability reviews and so forth. And ultimately, this will culminate in about a little over a year in a guaranteed maximum price for the actual construction of the Southside project. We had a technical advisor selected for this project, HDR Engineering. HDR evaluated this $13 million proposal from Crowder/Hazen and recommended that it was a reasonable amount for the level of services that is being provided. To give you some context, obviously $13 million is a large number, but on a $240 million budgeted project, it's about 5% of the budgeted construction costs. So we felt that was fair and reasonable when we benchmarked that to other projects in North Carolina. Craig will hand out a little animation which will show how the construction of this project will proceed with respect to a timeline from 2024 through 2030. And if you just open it up, the screen will turn on and it will start the animation itself. But essentially what you see is starting in 2024, the existing site that we had purchased will be cleared, and then in a sequential fashion, construction will occur based on the design that this agenda item is approving. It's a concept at this point, but we do feel that this is probably a very likely scenario of how the facility may be constructed at the property of River Road. And this gives you a little bit of a visual of what $13 million is providing. That's the design that you're seeing in this animation. Along with this, it is important to note that we had designed this project back in 2013, and we are going to leverage about $4 million of that previous design. So we really pushed the design-build team to leverage benefits from the funding that was previously expended on this. In your packet, the next item would be the budget ordinance to provide funding for this particular project beyond what was in our CIP. And then the third item is a resolution to accept a low-interest loan from the state in the amount of $35 million that will help support this project. And obviously, any kind of outside funding we receive is beneficial in terms of keeping rates to our customers as low as possible. So those are the three items, and Craig and I would be happy to answer any questions.
So I just have a general question. I'm not on committees that oversee this anymore, but obviously the engineers are going to be incorporating best practices in terms of need and environmental considerations, and I'm just wondering if there's a mechanism to hear back about I think somebody was talking about potentially putting in a solar array, possibly, or it'd be interesting to know.
There's various evaluations in this first phase, whether it's utilizing the biogas or what would solar look like, or what are other sustainability features with respect to sea level rise that we have to consider. And we anticipate that we would come back to our long-range planning committee several times over the next 12 months. And then those reports would obviously be in the board packet, and we can discuss at the board meeting as well.
And I know there's funding coming down from the federal government to enhance the green modalities. So honestly, we want to make sure that where that money is accessible, we bring into consideration this project.
Correct.
Sort of standard as you go.
Mm-hmm.
Carl, are the, pretty snappy thing here, by the way. Congratulations. Are any of these local? Is the personnel local?
So Crowder Construction is a very strong North Carolina-based construction company. For a project this size, obviously they would have people that would be relocating to this area to support that. And then Hazen is a very strong, large office in Raleigh, but they are in the process of opening up an office here in Wilmington that would not only support this project, but also other projects that the authority may have in the future.
Question. You mentioned this before about the proximity of the project to the Cape River. And the design that was done in 2013, certainly our knowledge and understanding of water's rising has changed since then. Has that been calculated in? Can you raise our comfort level so that we know that if we don't get a major hurricane, this doesn't get flooded?
Correct. We specifically added a task in this initial scope that the $13 million will support about resiliency, including impacts of potential sea level rise being right there along the river. We also, that's why one of the reasons why we could not use the previous design in its entirety, because some of the facilities that we, were critical facilities were located fairly close to the river. And we felt with all the lessons that we've learned over the last 10 years that was probably not appropriate. I'll give you an example that the standby generators were located right next to the river. And if there's a time that we really need the standby generators to function properly, it would be during a hurricane. So, rearranging of the site, which allowed us to do by purchasing the additional property from the city here in the last few years, opens up a whole wealth of opportunities to not only build this facility while maintaining the existing plant in operation, but also build it in a way that we have more resiliency.
How far above the base flood elevation will we place our critical infrastructure for this project?
Standard design would be 2 foot above the 100-year flood level. But again, we're going through an analysis of, say, is the 100 years that really appropriate, and what would that mean for the entire facility? And the beauty of having a design-build team is then we can also assess, well, what is the impact on construction cost? And back to your previous question, Commissioner Zappel, about the firm and their location. McKim & Creed is also part of the team on this, and they obviously have a local office.
And I know you'll factor in as well the very strong possibility that the river will be deepened, 4+ feet in the near future or mid-range future. It'll take a few years, which of course will liken the ability for it to rise higher in the major storm events, just by the fact the volume of water that's capable to come up. So I know there's people like yourself who are way smarter than I will please bring that into consideration.
Absolutely.
Any more discussion? All right, we got, 3 action items we need to, vote on. The first is the, $13 million contract agreement with Crowd Construction for Southside Wastewater Treatment Plant, replacement and upgrade.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Ordinance, second is ordinance appropriating funds for the Southside Wastewater Treatment Plant replacement and upgrade project.
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then lastly, is a resolution accepting both the state loan for the Southside Wastewater Treatment Plant replacement and upgrade project.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now, sustainability.
Yep, our committee met this past month, and we do not, I don't have a presentation for today, but I will say for the record, I mean, everybody around here, I know we've been working on an affordability dashboard. John and his team have done an incredible job of building out sort of a metrics database so that we are monitoring our affordability. Obviously, that's part of our mission statement, we're critical services that we provide. This dashboard has also allowed us to sort of, in the wake of the pandemic, get our hands around what the unmet need is in our community. The county and the city have been kind enough to start a first ever really sort of big fund available for customers who are at risk of imminent disconnection in the amount of $100,000. It's for extremely low income folks only. So we'll be watching that, and we're have sort of our ongoing measurements of how we address unmet need and how we measure affordability. And so it's an incredible, it's not a spreadsheet, it's almost like a mini spreadsheet that John and Steve put together. So we'll keep you updated as far as disconnection from Northville moving forward.
Human Resources, Hollis.
The Human Resources Committee met on August the 17th. Our topics included the review of the employee benefits and the associated costs for the calendar year 2024. This is an informational item, and the PowerPoint is in the board packet.
Thank you. Lastly, consolidation. See, the August progress report is in the packet. After the August board meeting, a letter proposing an outline of consolidation terms and conditions was transmitted to the town on August 15th. The town is evaluating the letter, and we're anticipating possibly an October meeting. In the meantime, the consultant is working on the draft feasibility study report. Any questions?
If I hear you right, Dean, so we've now put something in the hands of Wrightsville Beach, and they're taking a look at it?
They've been looking at it. I think we haven't had any discussions with them formally, and some folks have been on vacation, I believe. So we're hoping that we'll get back to them in October and discuss.
When do you think? By the end of the year, we'll have a signed deal?
It just depends. I mean, there's still some moving parts and some things that can't be formally discussed. I mean, I like the way it's going. And we'll see what comes up between now and then. All right. Any old business? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.